Hello everyone and welcome to this latest video discussion as part of the RICS Tech Partner Programme. My name is Andrew Knight and I've been with the RICS since 2011. My role is to look at the effect of data and technology right across the built and natural environment, and with over 110,000 qualified members working worldwide right across that property life cycle through land, planning and development, construction, finance, valuation, brokerage, asset management, building surveying. It's clearly a very wide canvas upon which data and technology is having a profound effect. And indeed, our members work across all the major asset types, whether that's land itself, commercial, residential, alternative assets and infrastructure. So once again, a very wide-ranging profession where data and tech is obviously, as I say, having a very profound effect. And I'm really glad to have Tom join me today from Quantik. So Tom, welcome to the call.
Thanks, Andrew.
Pleasure. Now, it's always sort of nice to perhaps get a bit of a kind of human background before we go into the kind of bits and bytes too much. So it'd be great to hear a bit about your personal backstory in quantity surveying.
Yeah, of course. So I've been a quantity surveyor for just over 20 years now. Started right at the bottom as a trainee QS in 2003, working for Lang & Rourke, who are an international main contracting firm in the construction industry. Attended university part-time, so that was the old apprenticeship type route before apprenticeships became apprenticeships in the current form. Then went on after that to do a master's in construction law and a master's in construction engineering as well, the latter being from the University of Cambridge. And in my working career, had a very vast and some great experiences working here in the UK and also in Hong Kong and Australia, working in commercial leadership roles on major construction projects, main contractor and a subcontractor and a specialist and supplier of products as well, so different parts of the industry, different countries. And then coming back to my RICS, that was a key achievement for me, which I membership achieved in 2009 and fellowship I attained that in 2016. And then now I'm director at Quantik, which I founded in 2020. So a very skimming across the surface summary of my career to date, or quantity surveying career to date. Does that cover everything?
It sounds like a bit of a grand tour, given you've seen it from every side of the fence, if I can use that phrase, within the kind of construction sector, and obviously seen it from an international perspective as well. So tell me a bit more about Quantik in terms of what Quantik does for the sector.
Yeah, so that I guess building on my personal experience in industry and across the world, and my obvious interest in quantity surveying and I guess how it could be different. I founded Quantik 4 years ago now. At the core, we provide quantity surveying services to the construction industry, but the vision of the company is very much to blend or combine the traditional quantity surveying practices, which are vitally important in the construction industry, with the intelligent use of technology, to then develop solutions that are industry leading, innovative and doing things differently. And we work with main contractors, specialist subcontractors and law firms. So yeah, we day-to-day quantity surveying type services, through to construction claims and expert witness type work. But in amongst that, we also do business transformation work, where we look at how business processes can be improved or systems can be improved through, not just technology, but there's people aspects to that, there's process aspects to it. So we do that across the UK, and we do have worked in Europe and Australasia too, which are markets that I'm familiar with ambitions to expand wider, which is made so much easier with technology itself. The world's so much more open now. It'd be foolish not to take those opportunities as they come.
Indeed, and you recently joined, Tom. You recently joined the Tech Partner Program. What was your motivation, and what do you want to sort of get out of it, working with us and other members of the program?
Yeah, so that I think the philosophy or the values of the program really stood out to me because they align with what we're trying to achieve at Quantik. You know, we are intelligently using technology to deliver our services, and we are developing ways to improve the productivity and performance of our clients, which is really exciting for me personally, and we're pushing boundaries. And I think the opportunity to be part of a program with like-minded people who are thinking the same and doing the same was a huge appeal. Because I guess we have to recognize that not one person has the answer to the improvement. It's going to come through conversation and discussion and exploration with with like-minded people, and I think that the program provided access to that. So we've got our small part that we're playing, but then what can we learn from other people? So the fact that it was programs led by the institution of which I'm a member, and Quantik is a registered firm as well. Combine that with the community aspect of the program, you know, really stood out to me. So we want to contribute to the discussions and learn from them on data and technology issues, you know, with other professionals. So open to learning from other surveying professionals and peers across the sector, and then contribute to the learning of the program and others. So that's what really spoke to me.
No, excellent, and you know, we always appreciate getting such a good mix of people on the program, because clearly there are many people coming arguably from outside at the built environment sector with strong technical skills and strong ideas, but as you know better than I do, the domain knowledge around the various parts of the built environment can be quite specific and very powerful, and it's about blending those two strengths of technology, but also that really deep understanding of the assets and the practice areas that I think is going to be the key power here, I think, to make technology work. I mean, my next question is huge really in terms of the potential answer, but you know, how do you think we can do a better job as a sector of integrating technology and something like quantity surveying to actually make the whole process better?
Yeah, it's a wide question, and I guess where do we start, and how long have we got? Because there is huge opportunity, and I like the idea of the program. As you say, people are outside the profession looking in, and we're inside looking out, and that, you know, opening your mind to new ideas and new possibilities, you know, appeals massively. So I think just coming back to the question though, the quantity surveying, like all professions, needs to keep pace with the world that we live in. So, you know, we've got young people entering the industry who are used to living their life in a very different way to the way that I did when I joined the industry. You know, everything is now tech driven, application driven, social media engagement. You know, it's a completely different world, and we need young people to be coming into an industry or a profession, sorry, a quantity surveying profession, which is similar to the world that they live in. I think that's really important. But in terms of quantity surveying, because of the changes in the world, the demands of the role are changing as well, and probably changing at a quicker rate than we are adapting. If I think about the last 20 years and the changes, and do I feel I've fully kept pace with everything, and I'm, you know, at the cutting edge of, you know, every technological application? No, and that concerns me for the wider profession, and what that means if that rate continues or you know, gets worse, I suppose. So that's probably my fear. And the introduction of technology has brought benefits to the profession, but over time, it's also brought a series of challenges for us. So, you know, if you think about the number of systems we have to interface with now to collect data, the amount of data sets that we have to deal with now, in various different forms, the fact that design related information is all electronic now, and it's developed in a 3D environment. And then the fact that communication now is all through online tools and applications, that's, for me, probably got to a point for us and probably multiple professionals in the same way, have got to the point where the data and information that they're having to handle is just too much for one person, it's too much for one brain. It's probably too much for a team to handle too. The speed at which we're expected to handle it is ferocious. And if I just look at some examples from a quantity surveying perspective, that are specific to that and some of the challenges we have. If we look at procurement processes, for example, where there are thousands of documents, literally sent to a tendering contractor with, what you would say is probably an unrealistic expectation that somebody tenders something and provides a return that's fully compliant with all of those documents. There's standards and there's a huge amount of information. Can we really, as an industry or a set of professionals, say that we are procuring for value? Are we really getting value when we have these processes that are so intensive and still very traditional in the way that they're done? And then we move through the process to the contract stage, and we have the exact same. We have very specialist engineered solutions with extensive drawings, specifications, technical standards that go back years and years and years, and an expectation that the person signing that contract on the other side has understood the entire risk allocation and they've included, everything in their price and program. It's just not realistic for one person or even a group of people to do without improving their use of technology and tools available to manage that process. And that does, it's a completely different conversation, but maybe one for another day, but it definitely makes me wonder, is that where conflict avoidance has to start? Because naturally, if you understand what you signed and the risks and you've allowed for them and that's been managed through a process that's been fair and transparent, then you're probably removing a large amount of potential conflict that could come about later down the line. But if we look at the core of those two issues and others, really that's about document management and understanding. You've got layers and layers of PDFs. So I think there's a solution to it, and the tech probably exists, but we're just not accessing it. We're not integrating the tech with the profession to then use it better. So I think it starts with, for me, the integration starts with using existing applications more intelligently. I just noticed the other day in my Adobe, little AI assistant popped up in the top right, which was a delight to see, because the possibility of asking a PDF questions that tell you where things are, or might even get to the point where it can summarize your design risk. So rather than being buried away in thousands of different documents, it can collect all that, pull it together, and it doesn't give you a perfect 100% answer, but very quickly it can give you the bones and the outline. That alone would improve contracting and procurement processes. So just using the applications more intelligently, but then probably then moving into data science approaches. So if I think about the way that I, as a quantity surveyor, develop my data or understanding of data, it was arguably a DIY type approach. I learned as I needed it. I found answers, through colleagues or whatever. I don't think we quite had YouTube videos then to help us, but just a bit before that time. But it was a very DIY approach to learning data. But data science now is its own field. It's its own recognized field. It's a very clinical approach to using data, which is probably a world away from where I learned. So there's an obvious solution there in quantity surveyors learning data science as part of their training, their curriculum, and approaching data in a more clinical way than maybe the generation before, because I think that process of cleaning and structuring the data then allows it to be easily analysed. One of the challenges we have at the moment is we get data that's not clean from different systems. There's different structure, there's different key fields. And then trying to bring all that together after the event is challenging, whereas designing more of that in would make a huge difference. And then once we've got well-structured data, I think you're then into applying generative AI. I think generative AI would be challenging with the industry and its data structure in its current form. I think it would work, but I think it would be better if it was combined with improved data science principles. So but running alongside that as a profession and the integration between the two is developing standards, whether it's educational standards or professional standards. We need to develop standards and enhance the standards, whether it's standard method of measurement, new rules of measurement have played a role in our profession. Then we also need to recognize that technology will, and our professional standards need to develop alongside that too, Andrew.
Well, I mean, it's hugely clear that you've put a lot of, a lot of thought has kind of, developed in your mind about the kind of issues, and you've touched on some very kind of fundamental challenges around, as you say, so much of our data being locked away in PDFs, and the fact that actually, in a funny way, it's as much around document management and the ability to summarize and programmatically get through information in a way that, as you say, one is presented with an avalanche of data in so many contexts here. I'm interested to kind of probe around. You've clearly at some point a fire was lit inside you to realize how important this was. Was there one particular event or one particular thing that sort of made you realize that both the challenges and the opportunities here, or was it a general gradual process of realization that this was going to be so important?
I think there was always a growing sense that it could be better, that the things I was doing and the practices that I had weren't as efficient as they could be, but you're limited by what you know, and therefore, whilst it might be better, if you don't know how it could be better, then you remain limited. So there was always that feeling. Then through the University of Cambridge masters that I did, that was an enlightening. It was construction engineering, but it was a change leadership program, and we got access to speakers from all over the world, inside the industry, outside the industry, who really, they talked about big data and statistical analysis, various concepts that were new to me, but really broadened my thinking about, why isn't it different? How could it be different? While, particularly learning from other industries about what they're doing, and for some reason we seem to struggle with adopting some of those practices. Why is that? Is it a people element? Is it a process issue? Is it just a general unwillingness? So that really opened my mind and allowed me to reflect on some of the deeper issues. And then in around 2020, I was working on a major project in Australia, which was the New South Wales bushfire recovery project. And I worked with someone he was the data and systems lead, but he was educated, as I recall, as a mathematician, extremely clever individual. And he completely changed my thinking about how data and systems should be used and applied to what we do. So, just again, coming out from a different angle, he'd learned a different way. So through the creative tension of me being the demanding architect of certain systems, and he as the engineer, in a very quick time frame, we masterminded an end-to-end procurement and cost management system. And it was a phenomenal piece of work. It was the criticality of the program meant that it had to be delivered in a matter of months. It could only be done with these kind of tools. It couldn't be done traditionally. If we were, I mean, there were 3,400 properties. If we were trying to do that using Excel spreadsheets, we'd have still been trying to cross-check them now. So we needed a data and systems approach that allowed us to manage huge data sets, costs, procurement in a very sophisticated way. And because the program came under very high levels of government scrutiny, so audit was critical. We needed robust systems. We again, talking people through Excel spreadsheets is just not driving the confidence that a system does, where the data is driving the analysis and people get comfortable and confident that they can, look at outlying costs and drive into why is that cost outlying, and then there's reasons, the level of confidence, and we could group rates and costs into certain bands, agree with the client what was acceptable, not acceptable. So that really improved the confidence. But what it also did is we showed government through that process how money could flow from the Treasury into effective economies at speed. So it, in terms of a fiscal stimulus, rather than it just being about doing work, the data and systems had a much more profound economic impact. So we could pinpoint using a mapping technique and the contracting and payment processes that I designed, how that money could flow. And because we were making payments weekly, and because of the data systems approach, the records, the rates being standard, we could very quickly turn payments out and keep the money moving through to the supply chain. So it wasn't just innovative, it was revolutionary what was done and game changing. And I remember being asked week after week to show this to different MPs who were keen to know how an intelligent tech solution could not only deliver a construction project at speed, but could also do it in a way that fiscally stimulated the affected economies. So there wasn't a compromise. We didn't have the contractors locking cash away for months on end type scenarios that you get. So I think combination of circumstance and people, together at the right moment created some really fantastic things. But and that really not did it just change my view on how it could work differently. I guess it reinforced my view that it could work differently. There's a lot of waste in what we do, which we seem to tolerate because it's what we've always done. And as a profession, I think there's a danger that because of that, we become a barrier to the improvement rather than the ones that are leading the improvement. And I feel my concern at the moment for the profession is that we're sleepwalking into that rather than stepping back and going, how could this can be different? It can be different, and it has to be different. Otherwise, we're going to become, it's an existential threat to the profession if we don't move with the times. So, what I learned from that as well is the need to be braver. Try things, trial things. Some things will go well, some things won't go so well. But that's better than drifting into, an existential threat, which we potentially have. So, combination of things. But I think working with that individual that really showed me how to structure data, how to clean data. I guess some of the errors of my ways. You saw the number of times he had his head in his hands going, no, you can't do that. And then showing me why I couldn't, and then I need to adapt. And that process for me was enlightening.
Indeed. And I suppose if we take an optimistic view, as you said, that that there is a danger that the profession doesn't move in the kind of correct direction and take advantage of technology. But if you had a crystal ball, or if everything that you would like to do and like to achieve and like to see the profession to do, what do you think the future of quantity surveying looks like when we get this kind of blend of technology and domain knowledge and skill in one whole piece? And arguably, I retain a very optimistic view that technology will help all the practice areas that our RICS professionals work in terms of making them able to actually devote more of their time to the added value piece, arguably, rather than, as you've described, messing around with spreadsheets and copying and pasting and having to almost sort of manage the data because it's in such a poor form or has to be handed around from stakeholder to stakeholder. So what's your optimistic view of the future of quantity surveying and indeed the profession as a whole?
Yeah, so I think the danger and the risk has to be there because we have to be realistic about change and what it might mean if we're unwilling to make the changes that are necessary. But you're quite right, Andrew. If you look at the positive and the opportunity that exists, it's phenomenal. That way of working, as you described, of managing data that's in a poor form and moving it around and that's copy and pasting. That's not an attractive proposition to people working in the industry, let alone people that were trying to interest in joining the industry. So I think for me, I see a future where we operate with no waste in how we use or process data. That has to be the realistic aim, not a it could be done. It has to be done, because that will lead to a huge swing in how we allocate our time and activities. So instead of spending, let's just say, 80% of our time doing that non-value add stuff, we turn that on its head and we're spending that time doing value add stuff, and just think about how much more productive we could be and impactful we could be if that was the reality. So the goal and the benefit is phenomenal and definitely well worth aiming towards. And that's what I want for the future of quantity surveying: a modern profession, intelligently using technology and adding maximum value to the construction projects that we work on. And I'm fairly unwavering in that belief that it can be achieved. 100% it can, but we have to aim towards it and believe that we can achieve it.
Because you mentioned a number of areas already where arguably the profession can deliver even better, whether it's around heading off dispute resolutions much earlier in the process by having the kind of correct data assembled and summarized and understood. And you've talked about the fact that so much time is wasted massaging data. Can you think of some other areas where, at the risk of leading the witness here, to use the legal phrase, there's obviously a lot of focus now on whole life carbon and the balance now not only of cost and time and sort of deliverables, but also the environmental impact. Clearly, the profession will be, I think, under pressure, if that's the right phrase, to kind of help with that. Those design choices, those trade-offs between embodied and operational carbon and the right kind of materials to choose. Is that another area where you think technology can help the kind of QS profession?
Yeah, without a doubt, capturing data in the right form and structuring it in a way that informs future design decisions is invariably gonna make a difference. And probably we do capture it, but not in the best way, and we probably don't use it and plug it back into design models and everything else that it's automated. It's more traditional. So definitely that's an area that needs to improve. But for me, probably if we just look a bit more day to day at the construction industry and some of the challenges it's having around profit and financial stability. So we see, regularly, almost every day, contractors ceasing to exist or suffering financial failure. And that for me is a very topical issue that the business models are just not sustainable. So we talk about sustainability in terms of environment, but I think first things first for the contracting businesses, this is a survival element that they're struggling with, or a lot are struggling with. So, and if I look at a particular example of how data and systems or intelligent use of technology can improve that, one example I've been using a few times recently is monthly reviews that are undertaken to understand the profitability of a construction project or contract. Now, the QS in a contracting environment is the key to that review. They pull together the information and report it to senior management, and then that information is then rolled up into a consolidated set of accounts, which is issued to board directors and shareholders to indicate the financial health of the business. But I think when I look back at my 20 years, that process probably hasn't changed much, if at all, in those 20 years. So we still collect the data, which can be cost, program, procurement, revenue. We still collect it very traditionally, and we still stitch it together very traditionally to create a picture of performance. And we struggle because the data's either badly struggled, or we just don't have the time to process it in a way that allows effective analysis. And what the root of that then is, or the issue that then leads to, is accounts information that is not reflective of the true performance of the business potentially, which then means decisions are not made with all of the data. But I do then wonder how much more impactful that process could be if data science principles were implemented or used. So what if the data sets were clean and well structured, and a company's systems were set up to work together rather than independently, which is often the case, because that system was procured at a particular point in time to meet the needs of a particular requirement, but no consideration has been given to how it works, and breathes with the rest of the systems. So they're not complementary to each other. Could you then, if you did set that up correctly, lay a platform across that data and ask the data questions? So you remove a lot of the data processing, and multiple stakeholders at different levels can yield insights about the project performance, productivity performance, profit performance of their projects. So and then you're into generative AI and asking for probabilities maybe of how certain are we to deliver our profit, those kind of things. What are the risks to that profitability? Then you're into, as we spoke about before, less about processing the data and more about asking it questions and understanding what needs to be done to improve performance, which allows people to then spend their time doing that part of the work than spending 3 weeks of the month just trying to keep their head above water and throw out a report that means something to somebody. They can actually be doing something about it. And if I connect that back into productivity, Andrew, so again, going back to the first question, I don't think it's a secret or a surprise to know that the construction industry, despite being labour intensive, is incredibly poor at measuring and improving productivity. Some statistics in an article I did recently at the Office of National Statistics. So the whole economy between 1997 and 2020 had a 25% productivity improvement, whereas construction had a 10% deterioration in its productivity performance, which is a 35% net deterioration. So the amount of loss or additional cost that is required to deliver a unit is worse now than it was, according to the stats 20-25 years ago. And then if you set that against the real capital investment, so construction's had more than 100% of increase in real capital investment compared to the whole economy at 40%, those things don't seem to stack up. You've got all the investment going into equipment and tools and tech and people, but yet it's not yielding a productivity improvement. And I do think that's where data and systems, looking at standardizing rules, there's huge potential there to improve the productivity of the industry. And then I suppose either you address the skill shortage or you build more on budget. You don't have this situation where budgets are blowing out. We are delivering to budget, so, and therefore building more schools and more hospitals and whatever the country needs. So I think there's a huge part that the intelligent use of technology can play in that, and really just elevate conversations and place focus on what actually needs to be done to stop projects going off track, rather than what people think needs to be done or what their opinion is. That alone would be, a big change, I think, in the industry.
Indeed, and I suppose it's really worth emphasising that whilst we're sort of talking about quantity surveying as an area of practice, that broader impact on the whole industry is really key here in terms of profitability, delivering projects on time, as you mentioned earlier, making sure that project payments flow more quickly to the various tiers of contractors, which is an important thing, as you say, around not only sustainability in terms of profitable projects, but allowing the cash to flow around in a timely way to support the various tiers. And I suppose from that point of view, you've also mentioned something I was going to raise about the kind of what seems to have been, for me, with only being at RICS for whatever 12, 13 years now, is this perennial anecdotal backdrop of a skill shortage, and the fact that we do need more people in the profession, and we never seem to be able to either attract enough people into the profession or as you say, be productive enough to really work and manage the projects that are there with the number of people who are qualified to do this. So I suppose technology perhaps gives us two solutions there. It helps us attract the next generation to make sure this is an attractive contemporary profession, but also, to be blunt, makes us more productive, that actually we can do more with the same person hours. I mean, is that a good summary of where we need to be moving towards?
Yeah, without a doubt, because we from what I see, conversations seem to move towards us having a skills shortage quite quickly, and it seems to be that's the easier thing to say, because then it's an external problem that we can't do anything about, and it's externalized, and then we can talk about all the wider economic and issues that are going on in the country and why people don't want to be surveyors. But I think there is a question there as to whether we do we know that we actually need more? Do we know that we have a skills shortage? Have we actually measured, if we improved our productivity by X, what would that do to the skills shortage? Would it not be as much of a problem? And therefore, does the focus actually need to be on the internal issue, which is improving our productivity, which is the thing that we can actually do something about, because it's within our control. That's not. I do consider we do have a skill shortage generally, but I just think that the conversation needs to be balanced about what can be done to reduce and eliminate waste, because there is a huge amount, and intelligently using technology would go a long way towards addressing that.
Fascinating. Well, a final question for you, Tom. This has been fascinating and very illuminating. If you could give your younger self, if you were starting out now in your career, what would be your advice to people who are coming into quantity surveying now, and obviously particularly around this issue of technology and productivity? What would be your advice to the next generation coming into the profession?
Yeah, there's probably two high-level pieces of advice, but they're both connected. The first one is to take every opportunity that comes your way and don't stop learning, because it's a lifelong process. So I think sometimes there's an assumption that you finish university or you finish your APC and that's it. You can burn your books and never learn again. But really, learning is a lifelong process, especially in the world that we now live in. You have to stay relevant. Those opportunities to learn and develop come in all shapes and sizes. So, you might not know every final detail, but follow your instinct, and if the opportunity is right, then don't hesitate it and take it. And the second would be, I guess, a wider plea to lead the change. You need to make the generation before you, people like me, slightly uncomfortable, because you're doing things differently and you're thinking differently, and that's what we need. We need that tension, and that's what will create the fusion between the traditional methods, which are valued, that experience, with intelligent use and application of technology. I guess the summary point there is we all have a part to play, no matter what stage of your career at. So the plea to people to lead that change.
I suppose in summary, it's interesting, isn't it, to realise that the danger sometimes with a lot of the kind of the data and technology across the built environment is that it's been kind of almost done to the profession rather than us taking a role in driving it as well and embracing it. And I suppose my final observation is that in a once again taking an optimistic view with such a productivity issue, if I can use that phrase, the flip side of that is there's a huge opportunity to increase the productivity, because other sectors have obviously embraced technology in a way that perhaps does make us look a bit of a laggard in certain ways. But the flip side of that is there's a huge opportunity here that actually there's a lot of slack, if I can use that word, that technology could take up in that deficit on productivity. That's not down to lack of hard work by the profession, but it's that case of we need technology to help us work to even smarter than we are by doing, ironically, some of the tedious tasks that could be automated and free up the great brains like yourself to do all the harder stuff.
Absolutely, and then build more roads and rail and hospitals and schools, and I guess meet the core of the profession, which is serving the needs of the population. So there's definitely an opportunity there.
Indeed. Well, it's been fascinating and incredibly insightful. So, Tom, thanks ever so much for your time today, and I look forward to catching up again in the future.
Thanks, Andrew. You're welcome.